Hi, everyone. I'm Rosemary Miller here with Jeff Kauflin, a senior editor here at Forbes, here to tell us about startup founders opening up about their mental health. Thank you so much for joining me today, Jeff.
Thanks a lot for having me. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Yes. So, Jeff, startup founders are opening up about their mental health. Why has this shift happened, and what are some of the key benefits from this shift?
Yeah, I think it's happening because of a few reasons. I think there's always been really a strong stigma to people talking about their mental health and admitting that they are having issues with their mental health. And I think that's because people think it makes them look weak. Now, I think it's people are realizing now that it's just a natural part of the human experience to have mental health challenges, and so I think that's a big shift that's happening. And one of the things that's causing it is people speaking out more about it. I mean, you see things from elite athletes like Simone Biles and Naomi Osaka talk about it. Celebrities, Demi Lovato, Selena Gomez. So I think that helps. They've all come out about their mental health issues and how they're coping with it. And so I do think that helps. And, it's some of the benefits are basically, I think what some of the big benefits are is people are realizing that they're not alone. So they're feeling less lonely if they're having mental health issues, and they're finding out about more ways to get help. How do you proactively manage your mental health? And, some people say it should be managed like you manage your teeth, like dental care, more preventatively. And so that I think are some of the biggest benefits. People being comfortable talking about it more, so feeling less lonely, and also getting more information on how do I manage this? How do I get professional help if I need it? How do I do other things that are going to help me manage this?
I agree with you. I can rarely get on social media these days without seeing something about mental health. And that's interesting because that's just a huge flip side from getting on social media and seeing everything being about hustle culture in like 2016, 2017. But Jeff, I'm curious, could you give me some statistics? You mentioned this in your article that might be particularly prevalent among entrepreneurs.
Sure. Yeah. So there's been a lot of research on this. One recent study from earlier this year was a survey of CEOs, and 72% of the CEOs surveyed said that the job has affected their mental health. And that was in a negative way, around anxiety, depression. And there's also academic research showing that 38% of entrepreneurs had experienced, it was one of several conditions, including depression, anxiety, um, ADHD, substance abuse disorder. And so there's a lot of statistics coming out about it. And there's more and more research on it showing that also entrepreneurs suffer from these more frequently than the average business person.
And they also have quite a bit of highs and lows. Could you discuss the emotional roller coaster that these entrepreneurs are going through?
Sure. Yeah. Some of the people we spoke with, one person, Anita Hossein Chowdhury, who is CEO of The Grand, a group coaching startup. She said, I knew there were low lows and high highs, but I didn't know the frequency of them. And I think that's what is so striking for people is, in the course of just a few hours, you could be feeling great. Everything's going so well with the company. And then you get one email or, end one phone call. And it's like, oh, I don't know if this is going to work because, it's so challenging. When you're running a company, starting a company, you run into so many barriers, so many obstacles to success, so many problems that it really feels like, things can go from really great to really bad in a short time. And I think it's exhausting for people. I think going through those high highs and low lows so quickly can just be exhausting and demotivating for people.
So, how are founders navigating managing their startups, but also maintaining a healthy work life balance?
Yeah, I think there's different ways. I think that the ways that the CEOs we spoke with talked about the most were therapy, regular therapy, coaching, getting an executive business coach, these peer groups, which are basically support groups of founders and executives getting in a room, sharing privately their challenges, exercise. Sleep is a really important one. There's been a really important kind of movement, a lot of new research on the benefits of getting 7 or more hours of sleep. That's really caught on. It's really resonating with a lot of people. In fact, 8 of the 13 CEOs we spoke with for this article said that they get more than 7 hours of sleep, which I was surprised by, especially given what we were talking about earlier around hustle culture. That seems to be kind of dissipating, and at least in certain circles. And other things people talked about were getting in nature, going for nature walks. A psychologist we spoke with, Michael Freeman, talked about how that's restorative. It can elevate creativities. Having relationships, maintaining relationships with friends and family is really important.
I want to
Setting
talk about that.
boundaries. Sure.
Relationships, not so much
Yeah.
with friends and family, but from those in a similar position with you, like through forming some kind of peer group or social or support network with other
Sure.
CEOs. Is that effective? Is that common?
Yeah, it is very common. It is. And I wasn't as much aware of this either, but a lot of founders do have these, they call them founder circles or peer groups. And a lot of founders are doing that where, they are getting together. And Ryan Williams, the CEO of Cadre, talked about this. He said, especially during the first few months of COVID lockdowns, it was really helpful for him to be able to talk with other CEOs, talk about everything from business topics of how do we adapt to remote working to leadership challenges, and people find those extremely valuable.
So founders, they not only have their customers and their employees breathing down their neck, but they also have their investors. Are investors in any way taking responsibility for their mental well-being?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that they are. I think there are some that stand out more than others. I think there's a lot of actually investors doing this in different ways. Some of the ones we found out that stand out were one is Felicis Ventures. They're a Silicon Valley firm who they have this 1% program where essentially for every first check they write for a company, they also invest 1% in non-dilutive capital towards the founder being able to take care of their mental health. And that's a big deal. That's really helpful for people. They say only over 50 founders have taken advantage of this. And 776, Alexis Ohanian's venture firm, they do that too, and they actually do another 1% for caregiving. This program hasn't caught on very widely, but there's also other ways investors are doing things. QED is a fintech-focused venture firm. They are very proactive on it. One of their partners, Nigel Marsh, will call people up and say, "How are you doing? How are you doing personally?" And he's very kind of in tune with this. And they also have a session every year. They have a conference where they will bring all their founders together in one room, and all the investors leave, they close the door, and then they just let the founders talk to each other. And people say those are really helpful. They also have programs. QED also does programs targeted towards substance abuse disorder and identifying that early, because they actually had a partner at QED who very tragically passed away from substance abuse disorder a few years ago. And so they are really proactive in doing this and trying to take care of founders' mental health as well.
So you spoke about substance abuse. I'm curious, are founders just, taking drugs, maybe lighter drugs, psychedelics, to just take the edge off a little bit? And if so, is it effective?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's a lot of ongoing research about this. And the ones that basically have come up, at least that I've seen so far, are MDMA, which is also known as Molly or ecstasy, psilocybin or mushrooms, and ketamine. And ketamine in small doses is legal. Doctors have to administer it, but one of the psychologists we spoke with, she does occasionally, her name's Sherry Walling, she occasionally gives ketamine um, to her patients in a kind of like when she's doing psychotherapy. And so it's becoming common. Elon Musk reportedly has used ketamine to treat depression. The Wall Street Journal reported. And so it's becoming more common. I think Sherry Walling, who we spoke to, the psychologist, said you do have to be, of course, careful of the risks. This can't become a take-home strategy where you're doing mushrooms with your friends, and that can become problematic really quickly. Someone we spoke with from Y Combinator noted those risks too. Michael Siebel, a managing partner there, he said, the solution, the mechanism you're using to cope with mental health can't be worse than the stress itself. And so, whatever you're doing, it's got to be good for both your short-term and long-term mental health. Because, yeah, of course, there's risks to these types of things.
Well, this has been great. Thank you so much for joining me today, Jeff.
Thanks, Rosemary. Great to be on.